So we're ready to go here. We continue here on the Golf Zone Ledbetter University Virtual Summit. And we thank everybody who's out there for joining us today. My name is Tom Wormy. I'm a longtime television and radio broadcaster. And I've had the distinct privilege to work with the man who's joining me during this virtual summit, Mark Immelman, who has made incredible roads in the broadcasting world over the last few years. And I've been lucky enough, and I stress that word, lucky enough, to work alongside Mark on the PGA Tour radio broadcast. And Mark took that experience and cultivated it and cultivated his relationships on the PGA Tour. And now you all know him as one of the voices of CBS and its coverage of the PGA Tour. You might recognize the last name from a Masters a few years back, as Mark helped his brother to win that green jacket. But we're here to talk about Mark today. And I'm just so proud of what he's been able to do, because I feel like I had a 1% input on that to help him to develop his broadcasting chops, as we like to say in the business. And it's just a privilege to be alongside Mark and alongside all the great guests that we have. So Mark, maybe you could just start with some opening comments about what your escalation in the world of broadcasting has been like, and couple that with your incredible instructional work and the teaching of the game of golf and how much is out there for folks to consume.
Well, Tom, it's cool to be here with you, and it's so cool to be a part of this. I mean, David Ledbetter has been a mentor and a hero of mine as a young golf instructor. And you speak of the whole broadcast coach thing. I mean, my entire career in the broadcast industry and in the podcasting industry, that all came on the heels of a tweet. You know, I was a young golf instructor trying to make it, trying to be noticed a little bit. And Matt Adams, who had a show at one stage on Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio that you and I have both worked on, you still do. He had like Teaching Tuesday on. And so I tweeted the show and I was like, I'd love to be on. And so they invited me the next week, and that went pretty well. And that turned into a play-by-play broadcast career alongside you and your crew. And then from there, it moved into PGA Tour Live, because this was at the outset of digital viewing. We watch sports now, we stream, everything's on demand. And so I became a part of the announce crew there. And then, that thing grew exponentially because Tiger was doing great at the time and coming back. And from there, obviously CBS were paying attention, and I just sounded different enough. And I had, that weird sort of a hybrid of being a former player who's a good teacher, who's a college coach, and who's got some broadcasting experience. And all of a sudden, I find myself kind of at the top of the game, which is nuts. But anyhow, it's been a wild ride. It's been nice to get to know everyone. It's been nice to sort of be a part of this digital and broadcast sphere, because I've managed to use some of that now to kind of build my teaching platform a little bit too.
Yeah, we see some of the content, Mark, that you put out there as far as the different platforms are concerned, and we'll get into that a little bit later. As awesome as that picture of you is, we're going to advance to the slides that are going to accompany our presentation, and we're going to start. And Mark talked about it, and I love the global nature of things and how people can consume things from halfway across the world. And Mark and I have had many discussions on this particular topic, and I've been lucky enough to be a guest on the Mark podcast and some of our mutual friends as well. But Mark, I'll let you kind of really talk about and explain how things started. We see circa February 1st, 2016, and it just took off from there.
It's crazy. It actually began, and I use the term on demand because now we live in an era where everything is on demand. We all know this. I mean, no matter where you are, you can get whatever you want, whenever you want, and that's just the beauty of the internet. And I was part of the radio announce crew, as you referenced, and then I was approached by our boss to maybe do a weekday show, Monday through Wednesday, and the times were like 12 to 3, which is a weird sort of a time for the business people, golf guys. And that ran for a year. It was streamed on PGAtour.com, the PGA Tour's website. And at the end of it, done okay, but not great. And so I got a call saying, look, we want to turn your show into a podcast. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. I didn't know what a podcast was. I'd never listened to one. And So in February 2016, we had launched the On the Mark podcast, which was a derivative of the On the Mark radio show. And in February, I'll never forget, Tom, I had 34 downloads. So basically one a day. And I didn't know what was good. I didn't know what was bad, but I realized that 34 wasn't very good. But then I kind of pivoted a little bit and I was like, hold on a second. I'm a golf instructor. Why don't we go from like a magazine sort of a show that's highlighting PGA Tour stuff, and why don't we just help golfers? Why don't I use my platform as an instructor? Why don't I bring on other instructors I know? Why don't I leverage relationships with players that I know and have worked with? And let's expose these folks to people around the world, you know, golfers who might not have access to David Ledbetter or to Mark Immelman or to Butch Harmon or to Chris Como, all these great instructors around the world. And me being a young, you know, South African kid, all I learned about instruction was reading magazines. And I was fortunate to meet David Ledbetter in the end. And so this podcast was the perfect platform to give golfers access. And it was another perfect platform too to give, you know, the young instructor coming up or the bright mind just some exposure. And through this podcast, we've uncorked, we've exposed a few great young instructors who are now making huge strides in the social media realm and in the digital realm. And so it's just continued to grow. It's now become a thing that doesn't even need Mark. I mean, the On the Mark podcast is, people go there because they trust what we do. They trust we have an unbiased platform. They know we're going to bring on instructors from multiple genres, all in the vein to try and help golfers not to just better knowledge, but to understand stuff better, so they make the right decision. And that's kind of the angle that I bring. We one episode away. The next one will be the 500th, which is crazy to think about. I mean, downloads. Can you believe it? Over 125 countries around the globe. Over 3 million times this thing's been downloaded and averaging about 116,000 a month. So, you know, going from that first February where I had 34 to 116,000, it's proved to me that golfers just want to play golf. And whether it's a CBS broadcast or a PGA Tour radio broadcast or an On the Mark podcast or whatever, there's hundreds of podcasts out there. Golfers just want to get golf tips. And they're listening to, they're watching, because all us golfers, folks, we want to do better. And so that's why my podcast has grown. And I believe that everyone listening to this, if you approach it with that sort of a mindset that golfers want to improve, you're likely to gain a whole bunch of traction.
I took two things away from that. Number one, your podcast definitely needs Mark. That's the jumping off point. That's the foundation. That's the glue to make it digestible for the folks who are listening, because I've listened to many, many times. And the second thing is the incredible cross-section, Mark, that you've been able to hit. Like, you had my very first golf instructor on as a guest, Sean Hester from the Northeast. He's one of the top teachers, if not the top teacher in the Northeast. So from Sean, who worked with some incredible instructors in his early days, to the most prominent people in the game today. So I think what you're doing as far as hitting the different areas of the game, like Sean worked with Peter Kostis back in the mid 90s, and look where Sean is today. And Peter's obviously a preeminent voice in the game. And so I think that's incredible what you've been able to do. And as you can see, folks, the next episode. So can you give us like who that guest is going to be on that 500th episode?
It's actually going to be a guy called David McKenzie, who's a really renowned sports psychologist, works with a number of golfers, elite golfers, beginning golfers, professional golfers around the globe. He's British. And then the one thereafter is actually with a downhill mountain bike racer. You know, again, just to bring athletes to a place to show golfers that, you know, it's more than just hitting your driver straight. You know, it's the mindset to the thing. It's the emotional equilibrium. It's all of these sorts of deals that kind of blend together to help the golfer to shoot lower. So, you know, we're pretty global in what we do, and I'm bringing global voices, and that's a cool thing given the platform we currently have.
Yeah, we're gonna continue along those lines later on in the presentation, but let's move to the next slide. And there you go, Mark. I mean, we were looking at this earlier, and again, I know there was a sense of pride and astonishment in your voice just to kind of reflect back and see exactly what you've been able to put together in a short amount of time. But this is the globe. This is the whole thing. And it kind of further underscores the point that you were just making about not just the United States, but the entire country and the breadth of your reach as far as golf is concerned.
Well, yeah, as you look at that globe over there, this was given to me by Libsyn. And for folks who are looking into, producing a podcast, there's all sorts of platforms you can release it on. And the tour use Libsyn, the PGA Tour, and they sent this to me. And the shaded areas are where there have been downloads, with light being the least downloads and green obviously being the heaviest. In the United States, the biggest consumption, obviously. And there are two things that I get from this. First off, the lesson tee has changed. Certainly you can go for one-on-one lessons with people, and that's highly beneficial. I would always recommend that you forge a relationship with your professional, you find an instructor you trust. But nowadays, with the media that we have and the internet and the digital influence that people have, you can teach folks wherever. And as I look at this, again, it occurs to me that you look at the globe where there are areas that are shaded. From this little box that I'm currently in, this is where the podcast is released from, that we can reach golfers all around the place over there, and that everyone still is wanting to do better. So it's a huge platform. Everyone listening to this, if you get to understand the reach and you truly grapple with the reach that the internet brings and what it affords one, look, I'm proof of the fact that a decent instructor with a different sounding voice can have a huge splash just by doing something a little novel.
Yeah, at this time, Mark, I would also remind folks who are on, who have access to the chat feature, if they want to send in a question, they certainly can about the topic that we're discussing. Anything germane to that topic, please send us a chat box question and we'll try to get to it. Let's advance to the next slide and continue on with the technological aspects of things as Mark had touched upon it. But Mark, I see a lot of numbers there. Maybe kind of boil that down for us and tell us exactly what that means to you.
Well, this just happened lately, and look, this COVID-19 period has been horrendous, and my best wishes go out to all and sundry listening to this and everyone around the globe, because it's been a global deal. But this COVID-19 lockdown was kind of a seminal sort of a deal for me, because at this stage, I was a CBS announcer and I was doing some work for PGA Tour Live, and I do some work for CBS Sports HQ, which is also a digital streaming service. And so I was aware of the reach of the internet, but during this time, I had some more time to look into just social media and watch other instructors and stuff. But I also realized during this time that, hold on, with no private golf lessons going on, and that's what I do when I'm not broadcasting, there still is a way to really reach golfers and to help golfers with their games, not just via the podcast. So I'd had a guy on called Baden Schaff, a young Australian guy, a real bright mind, golf instructor himself. And he exposed me to Skillest, which is his app. Now, just to put a timeline to this, I started teaching golf in '96. In about 2000, myself and my team, we developed what was like just a real basic app, I guess, that people could reach out to me and send me their swing and get the thing analyzed. But it was sort of clunky, and there was a lot of background work, and it was hard to deal with because billing and all this sort of thing was really on me. And so the time it took to give one lesson was really demanding. And then along came an app called Huddle, which I still use. I use that on my phone for swing analysis. But then Baden comes along to me. He gets on the podcast. He describes to me what they're doing. And the app is unreal. And it's evidence of a number of apps that are available to the golf instructor watching this, that you can now develop yourself a global reach. I mean, these numbers we see here, they're from last year. And this year with COVID-19, the stuff has exploded. He just didn't share the numbers with me. But in 2019, 100,000 plus lessons given, 45,000 active students, 10,000 unique students a month. And it's global, this. The bulk of the lessons come from the United States, obviously. And there are 1,000 instructors on the platform. And they're looking for more. They always were. That's why they added me. And so I find with this Skillest app right now that it complements what I'm doing with a podcast, where I say in the podcast, look, here's Tom Wormy, who's given you this insight on this. I am available to look at your golf swing if you want, and we can do online analyses. And the one thing Skillest does also is they now have the ability on this platform to have you basically do like a live FaceTime lesson where you put your phone in front of yourself or your iPad, and your instructor, wherever he might be, can communicate with you throughout the lesson. So it's live chat, if just like this, where what I do is I just do swing analyses, that I analyze the swing with drawing tools and the like, and then I add swing videos and examples that I've gotten of models and such. And so it's a wonderful way, again, now to grow that lesson tee of yours. If you're feeling kind of stagnant and maybe less business is down due to COVID-19 or whatever the fact might be, get onto something like this. Start to use the technology that we have at our disposal, because it is crazy. When he first reached out to me, I was like, oh, this sounds like a good idea and stuff. But he sold me with, look, you can do these lessons whenever you want. And if you just specify in your chat to say, send the video, I'll have your analysis back to you in 48 hours or whatever, you can get to this thing whenever, when you're on the plane, when you're at home, when you're in the hotel room. And so it had a bunch of huge effect on me from that point of view. And then it's just steadily grown. And I've found it a lot of fun. We've had a lot of success. Thankfully, I've been able to communicate in a way with the students, even though I'm not dealing with them face to face, being able to help them to improvement. And we're seeing improvements out of folks. And so, again, alongside the podcast, now this is another way to just continue to enlarge this digital footprint of mine and anyone else who tries it. And then in the same time, help golfers around wherever they are, even though they might not get to come and meet me wherever I am at the time.
So it sounds like, even though if you're not a technical whiz, Mark, there's still a lot of positive benefits about this give and take and this exchange, especially when it comes to the Skillest app.
Absolutely. For the students, it's as simple as videoing themselves from the front view, the caddy view, and then one from down the line, and you get on the app. It's easy to set up your own profile. You pick your instructor, you upload the videos to him. They go straight to the instructor. The instructor, in this case me, Skillest, do all the billing on the back end. I just see the payments show up in my bank account. Me, I do the analyses, I upload it, it goes straight back to the student. There's a chat feature where we can text back and forth inside of the app. And so it's the interface is super easy to use, whether you're an instructor or whether you're a user, a student. And it's a situation that I sort of like, where everyone's winning. You know, the instructors do well, the instructors can grow their business, the students have access to bright new minds, and hell, I've had folks from Italy, I've had folks from the United States, obviously, I've had some folks from the UK, and it's neat to give a person a golf lesson even though you're not alongside them.
Eccezionale.
Yes, see.
That's Italian for excellent. Well done, Mark. And I think our next slide actually adds a little more support to the subject matter that we're addressing right now. So we'll advance to that. And this is what Mark tells me all the time. And you can see Mark on so many different platforms. I mean, his resume as far as what he's been able to do and is doing and continues to add to his portfolio just grows. But he said this is the basis. And Mark, the content is king. And if you've seen Mark do his lessons that are concise, and especially on his Twitter feed, just to take one example of that, I get feedback because people know that I know Mark, so they tell me about the lesson that they just saw, and I certainly consume his content. But Mark, tell us about this. Content is king, and we know the king in golf obviously is Arnold Palmer, but in this instance we're talking about the content and the things that you're able to produce.
Well, look, I open disclosure, I'm no social media wizard by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I'm involved on Instagram, that's sort of growing. I've been involved on Twitter and Facebook. The YouTube channel, I've gotten alongside someone, and I recommend that to anybody. Find yourself somebody who understands the media and will help you to almost streamline your stuff. And that's what I've been helped to do, to basically take one video, whether it's a golf tip or whatever. I furnish this to the company helping me, or the young lady who helps me, and she distributes this to all of the platforms out there. So the next thing I turn around and I see that, hold on, there's here is my one video tip, 1 minute long or whatever it might be, the golf tip, and it's been splashed across all of these platforms. And the thing about these platforms is it's a great way to grow awareness. And even though you don't have thousands of followers like some social media icon, one has no idea the reach of this stuff. And there's been situations like I do some writing for Golf Magazine on golf.com. And that's another avenue that I've been fortunate to be able to become involved in. And I wrote a piece that was talking about Bermuda grass. And the next thing here recently, I saw that People magazine had picked up a snippet of this and published it in an article that was talking about why Tiger Woods moved from California to Florida. So what I guess I'm trying to say to you, Tom, is the neat thing about this, and if you know what you're doing and you can tag your pieces or your tips or whatever you do, your videos, your tweets, your Facebook posts, if you tag them correctly, they're all of a sudden out there in this internet. And when someone gets on there and they type Tiger Woods, then it might see, well, dang, Bermuda grass, or this individual must have typed Bermuda grass, California. And then my article shows up. And all of a sudden, this thing has kind of gotten big, and I never even had that intention. I mean, you hope that something will grow and have some sort of a result as such. But it's amazing to me how the whole internet thing works. And if you're able to exploit it, and I use the term exploit, it sounds a bit kind of rough, but if you're able to take advantage of it, there's no doubt that you can grow your awareness and your notoriety very quickly and in a big way. I mean, I don't have a number of followers on the platforms that I have, but if I look at the impressions that tweets and videos and all that sort of thing get, it's crazy to me. So my marching orders, I guess, to the folks listening to this is, social media is a fantastic way to promote who you are. It's a fantastic way to define who you are. Because again, like my broadcast career was on the heels of a tweet. Now in social media, I can position myself as X. And we've seen so many of the social media icons, they've kind of done that thing. I've talked with a young golf instructor, a lady called Tisha Olin on my podcast. She was a good college golfer, played the Symetra Tour, didn't do very well. She became friends with Paige Spiranak, and we all know Paige Spiranak, she's got a huge reach. And so she, as a result, Tisha got into TikTok and these sorts of things. I don't know all of these apps. I'm, again, involved in not the real modern stuff like Snapchat and the like. But all of a sudden, Tisha is being used by organizations to promote products because her influencer reach has just grown. She differentiated herself. She's got something that she uses to stand out. Like she sort of adds a dance to everything. Good golfer, nice looking, well-spoken, insightful. She's got all that stuff, but she's got a little lane that she always walks down. And that was found by someone, and someone out there thought this is worthwhile and this lines up with what we do. So even though people doing this are looking at their social media accounts going, hold on a second, this is not doing what I think it's doing. You'd be surprised behind the scenes how many folks might get eyeballs on this, or how many folks will look at this and just not retweet the thing, but go, hey, Tom, I saw this tweet the other day by Joe, and Joe said this, and all of a sudden Tom looks, and even though you might not be getting the huge ripple effect on the social media, it's still making waves. And so create content, put out content nonstop. It's something that I've learned because, again, during the COVID lockdown, I was just podcasting. And someone, in fact, tweeted me or Instagram direct messaged me, and they're like, why don't you put golf tips that you're talking about on video? And I was like, well, I don't know how to produce stuff. But if you go and you look through some social media people, they have highly produced stuff. And then mine is just my camera on me. I give a tip, you upload it, all of a sudden off it goes. And they get great followings. But the key, I think, is to differentiate what you do. And the key, I think, is to make sure content is continual. All the folks that have a lot of success in the sphere, they don't tweet once in a while. They tweet 2 or 3 times, maybe a day. They put out golf tips 2 or 3 times a day. They're always staying top of mind, if you will, because then they are taking advantage of the algorithm. And all the secret, basically, I was told, now don't quote me if I'm wrong on this, but some social media expert said to me, all you really need is for one verified person to retweet one of your tweets, and all of a sudden it gets exposed to more algorithms, because you have your reach, and then those reaches, they touch other reaches, and so that's how something becomes viral. So all you need is one person who's got a little influence that retweets or talks about or re-Instagrams or whatever you want to talk about, you might call it. The thing can grow very quickly in a hurry, and that's sort of what I love about the internet, and how this internet has helped me, forge a second career as a broadcaster.
Number one, I would say we need to work on some sort of sponsorship for your content, but that's a whole nother conversation that we can have. Maybe somebody out there is interested, who knows? The other thing I wanted to know is, I still, when I'm at tournaments, Mark, I still love the face-to-face interaction with fellow professionals, teachers, people in the media, folks from the PGA Tour, the fans, whatever. Do you have an anecdote where someone approached you from any of those backgrounds and talked about something they had seen that you were involved in, and after the conversation you shook your head and said, wow, I just can't believe that just happened?
Well, yeah, I kind of do, and it happens fairly often. Jokes aside, I get called Trevor often, when I'm out on the golf course.
That's not bad. We're okay with that.
But on my podcast, as a South African, now American citizen, but South Africans, when we greet you, we say, how's it? And so when I began the podcast, I opened the first one with how's it? And how's it grew. And then all of a sudden, people were tweeting me back saying, how's it? And then we had a few T-shirts made that we did it as a contest thing, retweet this and win a T-shirt. And the T-shirt says how's it on the front, and it's spelled HOWZIT, ZIT for the internationals listening. And the O of how's it is my logo, the one you see on the left-hand side of the page. And so this grew, and all of a sudden I get to the golf course and I would say, how's it, tribe? Because I have something about a tribe just resonates with me. And so I'll be on the course and people will go, how's it, Mark? I'm a part of the tribe. And when you hear that, I still get goosebumps, because I might be in San Diego, California, and some guy will go, hey, how's it, Mark? I'm part of the tribe, love the podcast. And to me, it's one of those situations, like you say, where you're like, my goodness, what I'm doing, albeit seeming sort of insignificant at the time, you never know where this thing ends, and you never know who it affects. And even though we're talking about the internet as this unlimited sort of a population, this unlimited sphere of people that one can reach, it's still really about one. Whether you're giving an online lesson, or whether you're tweeting, or whether you're podcasting, or whether you're Facebooking, it's about that one person as a golf instructor. And this is the teacher in me coming through going, I would just like this tip or this video to help one person lower their golf score. And I'm continually charging folks listening to the podcast to say, hey, interact with us, direct message us. Let us know if this has helped you. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know what guests you liked. Let us know what guests you want to hear. Let us know what video tips you'd like me to shoot, because then you start to get some more interaction. So it's a back and forth deal. And again, it's about that one individual, and it is neat when you're out there on tour and people are there to watch the great golfers' way of playing the game, but they see you and they're like, how's it? Or what's up, Tom? Or love what you guys do. Because I know you guys on radio get it a bunch, because you on when us TV folks aren't on, and the folks in the car traveling a long distance, they connect with you. They sort of take ownership of you a little bit. And I found to a certain extent that our tribe, our podcast fans, they take great pride in who they are. Because I tell them, I'm like, you're the most informed audience, golfing audience, in my opinion, in the world, because we don't just profess one thing. I expose golfers of all manner. And if there's some disagreement about wrist alignments versus one camp and another, I'll get them both on to talk about it. Not at the same time, but I'll let them make their case. And so as a result, the golfers listening will be able to listen to, well, that's that side of the argument, and this is this side of the argument. And now I can form my opinion on what applies to me, and I can make a decision that's got a bunch of understanding and wisdom related to it. Because the truth about this internet is, if you just type golf or golf instruction or golf tips, I mean, your search engine will nearly blow up. And so as the viewers watching this who not golf instructors, you've got to be smart about what you listen to. And as the golf instructors listening to this who are wanting to put out content who do put out content, you must make sure that you tag your tips or your content or whatever it is appropriately, so it can go, it gets found if people go to Google or search engines like Safari or whatever they might use.
The game is amazing, Mark, and you just don't know what's going to resonate with a certain person or a certain group of people or who you might run into. And I wanted to congratulate you on your citizenship, number one, the United States. I know that was a few years ago, correct?
Yeah, 2016.
Okay, but still, it's fantastic. And I always get, when I'm working at a PGA Tour event, it's amazing that you said that, because I always get, is Mark Immelman here? They're always asking for Mark Immelman constantly. If I had a nickel, if I had, what is it, Iran? What's South African money?
Would you get back to the Iran, the euro?
Yeah, the euro. So whatever it is, if I had one of those for every time somebody said, is Mark Immelman here, I'd be a rich man. But aside of that, Mark, I know you have folks listed on this slide in particular that you wanted to touch upon. And yes, you're all putting your content in the golf sphere, but it's all one big family. And I know you want to promote some other folks as well.
I do, and I'm not so sure it's promotion. It's just these are folks to me that sort of fit the bill. And we're going to get to a slide in a bit where I'm going to talk about, because we've all talked about the benefits and the joys of exposing oneself on the internet and exposing one's content and what one does in terms of golf instruction or golf or whatever it might be. But a few of the folks that I've listed there, and there are a number of folks that I follow, and I've found that the more I do this, the more I follow people to sort of see what they do, to get ideas. And Jake Hutt from California, he's a young guy. He stands out, he differentiates. He's been on my podcast. In fact, I found him on the internet. And when I texted him, I got his number and I was like, hey, Jake, I want you on my podcast. And he's like, are you kidding me? He goes, man, I love the On the Mark podcast. You really want me? And I was like, yes, I want you, because what you're doing is just tremendous. And he sings, he's into music. So every golf tip that he does, he's got a little rap to it. So it makes it memorable. And the video content he's putting out on Instagram is unbelievable. I mean, it's simple, it's easy to understand. The guys from Athletic Motion Golf, Mike Granato and Sean Webb, they are, if you're into more of the sort of biomechanical stuff, they make videos and they do tips on this, and they talk about this highly in-depth subject in biomechanics, and they share the research that they do on gears, the 3D motion capture, and they make it sound super easy to understand. And if there's some sort of question that someone will pitch, they sort of expose myths. They break down myths, and they say, well, someone's telling you to do this. Here's 5 PGA Tour golfers. This is their body, how it performs biomechanically, and that's not doing what you guys think it's doing at all. So I love what they do. I think Erica Larkin is doing a tremendous job. I mean, she's young and she gets it from a social media point of view because she makes it cool, and the golf instruction she gives is highly appropriate. And Piers and Andy from Me and My Golf, I mean, they're going to be on this platform with with David Ledbetter Golf Zone. I think it's coming up in a couple of days. They do great stuff. They're easy to understand tips. They're two guys that know what they're talking about, and they're concise. And most importantly, when I watch what they do, there's not a whole lot of jargon about it. They're giving golf tips, and they're golf tips that everybody can understand. And that's the one thing I know for certain, especially for people now getting into this. Be very careful of what you think is mundane, because that might be earth-shattering to someone who reads your tip on Twitter. You might think, oh, no, this is not worth talking about. But you don't know what someone, if we go back to my map and I say someone right over there, if you had to let that tip go, you might change someone's world. So be careful of mundane. And that's the one thing Piers and Andy do. They deal with tips that a lot of the smart golf instructors, and I use that term loosely, they're sort of leaving alone. And so Piers and Andy do a great job, and then Mike Wassilison. I mean, I've never met Mike face to face. We've become really good friends. He's moving into the golf sphere, but Move You is, they do unbelievable stuff, and it's just got to do with one's physical well-being. And he's got his own catchphrase. He's like, you got to move your shh. That you can imagine what the rest of the word is. And Mike is entertaining. They're thoughtful. Everything they put out is tremendous. And so I follow them. But again, there are hundreds of guys and girls that I watch. I'm always watching because they're helping me now as the host of the On the Mark podcast to find more minds that I can now show off to people who are in our global tribe as our tribe grows. So I'm paying attention all the while, but those folks, I find myself watching their content more often than not, and they do a great job of being entertaining. They do a great job of being insightful. They do a super job of communication, which we'll talk about in a little while. I know we had a slide, the following slide, where we can actually click over there. I just, if we click to the slide, there's some links over there. We can't play these right now for folks, but just take a picture of that or a screenshot, and then go and put that thing in your browser and go and find them if you don't follow them already. Erica does a wonderful job of just being entertaining. As I said, Jake he's simple, he's concise, and he thinks outside of the box. He's a Californian kid who used to play ice hockey. So everything he's learned by just trial and error. And so that's how he's developed his brand of instruction. Mike and Move You, they just talk about physical well-being. And incidentally, they've helped me with a shoulder impingement, and I've never seen them. They've got awesome content they put out. The guys at Athletic Motion Golf are great, and I've talked about Piers and Andy, who I think are tremendous. So those are some examples that folks can go and check out. But it's amazing. If you type golf instruction in your search engine on whatever social media you're on, you'll find folks that pop up there, and people are doing a tremendous job of creating consistent new content. And it's hard to be new and groundbreaking with something like golf, where you can't really reinvent the wheel very much.
Well, like you said, you never know what might resonate with the various golfers throughout the world, be it the smallest little tip or the most complex thing that's in a digestible form presented by you. Every time I type in golf instruction, Mark Immelman on the mark comes up first every single time. Maybe it's just my browser. I don't know, Mark, but your name comes up all the time.
It's the beauty of algorithms.
I want to let you know.
That's the beauty of algorithms, is it? That's what I sort of touched it as we talked on a previous slide. But the way the algorithms work is, if you search for something a bunch, it'll start to show up at the top of your feed, and that's where, with some social media help, if you don't really know what you're doing, you can get someone to help your search engine optimization. So when you put out something there are certain keys on the back end that one can do with tagging and geofencing and all sort of fancy terms that I don't know, but they can lift folks up, folks up the search engine some. So when someone talks about golf instructors, that even though you might not be David Ledbetter, your name might show up in the list there pretty fast. Again, if you know how to take advantage of the internet.
Yeah, and again, like you said, Mark, we thank everybody for being on the Golf Zone Ledbetter University Virtual Summit. Just to reintroduce us as we continue on our program, Tom Wormy from PGA Tour Radio. I do some other things in television as well. Mark Immelman, you know him from so many different platforms, but perhaps most prominently from CBS Sports Golf coverage. And Mark has done a tremendous job with that over the last few years. And Mark, we have a Masters coming up, so I want to make sure we promote the fact that you'll be part of that coverage also as we advance to our next slide, titled Communication and Digital Instruction. Words have power.
They do.
And we should know about that, the very best, Mark, being in the medium that we are in, and the many different ways you can connect with folks through it, television, digital, radio, all the different platforms. But maybe you could further describe what we're trying to get at right here.
Well, this is where I learned that words have power. I mean, my dad's always preached it to me, but a lot. It was actually on a radio broadcast with you, and we were doing Bay Hill, and I was on the Jason Day group, And in radio, again, we've got to describe everything to the listener because there's not the benefit of the visuals. And just to that, it's something I didn't speak about. Just for the folks listening, if you're starting to create content, podcasts are great, but they're kind of the path of least resistance are pictures. And so the human being is more inclined to look at photos or videos than they are inclined to stick a earpiece in their ear and listen to some podcast with two brainiacs talking to each other. So the pictures are always good. But this rarely occurred to me when we were on the show, and I had Jason Day, and he was off the green, and he pitched in, and the ball hit the flagstick and just dove into the hole at speed. And I described this thing as it went into the hole like a homesick mole, and this became a bit of a thing. And my uncle, who was over here from South Africa, said to me afterwards, after the show, because we went back home, he said, "I love what you guys do." He goes, "You're painting pictures in the theater of my mind." And that's when it really occurred to me how powerful words can be, but this can be for good and for bad. And if there's one roadblock as it pertains to online instruction, or if you're using the Skillest app when you don't get to interact on the lesson tee where you can read a person's nonverbal cues, you've got to be very, very smart, and you can't be lazy when you're communicating in this digital space. We know this for various reasons. I mean, a tweet can be misconstrued in the biggest way, and you could ruin yourself in a hurry if you're not careful. You could say something that's just a little bit on the edge that someone takes the wrong way. All of a sudden, their response goes viral, and then you never know. So you can't be lazy in this medium. As good as what it is, there are roadblocks and there are challenges that one needs to circumvent if you want to continually be successful as you navigate the space. So you got to be careful with how you phrase things. You've got to be careful, and you can't be lazy, as I mentioned, and the absence of the verbal cues sometimes makes it hard. And I have found now, because of my radio experience and the podcasting experience, it sort of helped me to just express things maybe in a slightly more brief fashion, maybe in a slightly more clear manner. And I've listed a few keys that I believe are key. And this is from my experience as a radio guy who's now become a TV guy who parlays some of the radio experience. And through this all, I'm podcasting and putting out golf tips and tweets and stuff. Clarity is massively important. It's just transparency. Clarity is the state of being clear. And conciseness or brevity, I think, is the biggest deal. Because like if you're tweeting and your tweet is long, I mean, you're limited by character, but folks are going to go for the quick hits. People don't read the entire book, they read the executive summary. So if you can get this thing brief, you are better off to be noticed. You're better off to get interaction. If you can make your video tip, if you can make it brief and really colorful and really insightful and do it with no excess elaboration, I think you're on a winning wickets. I have a personal bugbear, Tom, when it comes to jargon or the use of highly technical sort of a shop talk or industry vernacular. And I find this more and more with golf, where, again, we go back to that global picture that we put up, that map where my podcast is downloaded. Like if I'm on this podcast and I'm talking about internal rotation of the shoulder, a bunch of the folks downloading this are not going to get what's going on. And so this is where I charge teachers, students, whoever, to find a way to describe whatever you're trying to describe. If you're trying to put out a tip or do a podcast or whatever, but do so that in a manner that makes it easily understandable. And I have to be a little careful because, like you being a radio guy, I like to use nice language. But you've also got to understand that the message is only as good as what it's received. And I've noticed that with some fantastic clients we've had on my podcast, where they're dropping all of this industry talk on folks, and the downloads aren't so high, and certainly the click-through rate is not so great because folks start switching off when they can't understand what's happening. So jargon you've got to be very careful of. I feel like repetition is a big deal. Don't be afraid of re-saying something. This is a radio thing. You know what it is. I heard you reintroduce us. Start and then say it again so it can stick. Be memorable. There's no doubt that memorability is a thing. And that's how I think tweets grow. I think that's how Instagram posts grow. That's how TikToks grow. I mean, I watch my kids TikToking. I'm trying to stop it, but anyway, that's beside the point. The TikToks even stick in my head because they're just so memorable. Entertaining, that goes without saying. Insightfulness, look, that's a big deal. But I would almost say, Tom, that it's better to be concise, clear, eliminate the shop talk than it is to be super insightful. You might have that tip that sounds kind of mundane again to you, but you put it out there, it'll go bananas and you'll go, why on earth? But just remember, it's your message you are passing on to somebody else. And your message, albeit fantastic in your head and your soul, is only as good as what the receiver encodes it. And then I want to add there, it's good to always have a catchphrase. Like mine is how's it? You get various folks that have their thing that they say. You do it when you do radio. And if you watch any social media person, like I'll go back to Jake Hutt, after every tip, he finishes it with, and you'll get Purina, and it gives you the aloha, the surfer's sign. People follow that. I watch the comments. Purina, I hit it. It's Purina now. So have a little catchphrase that sort of begins to define you, because then people gravitate to that sort of thing. So be careful over there. Be careful with the communication, because in the end, even though you're tweeting, even though you're Instagramming, which is a picture, it's about communication if you really break it down to its nuts and bolts.
That's some great stuff, Mark. And I think the conversational nature of things lends itself to connecting with the viewer, the listener, whoever it is you're trying to connect with. And I think the way you outlined those specific points that you made is just fantastic. And what you just did right there is exactly what you just preached about connecting, because you had everybody's attention without question there. Do we have one more slide, Mark, on our presentation? No, yes, we do. We have the one that says thank you. So
yeah.
I want to thank Mark and everybody from the Golf Zone Ledbetter University Virtual Summit who allowed me to be part of this. It was fantastic. I've learned so much just from talking with Mark, and I've had many conversations with him over the years, and I've known Mark for about a decade now. Can you believe that? Mark Immelman? I mean, we go back a ways now. We're
losing hair.
because of have to deal with me. That's why. But if there are any questions out there, I'm looking at the accessibility of the chat box. I don't see anything at the moment, but really, Mark, it was fantastic to cover all these topics. And maybe you have just one summation statement that you'd like to leave the folks with.
Yeah, I would. I just want to sort of look at folks and say that, I am visual proof that anything's possible. I'm a kid that grew up in a small town in South Africa called Somerset West. I had dreams of playing professional golf. That didn't pan out, but heck, I became a golf teacher by hook or by crook. I've ended up in the United States. I got into radio. I mean, social media helped me to find my way through here. I had just enough that was a little different, and perhaps I had a little angle to me that got me noticed. And now all of a sudden I get to work on probably the preeminent sports broadcasting network in the world. So I want to say to you, anything's possible. And if you are here and you're struggling to get your golf teaching business going, look wide. It's more than the lesson tee. If you're struggling to gain exposure, just keep doing it. Anything's possible. And just find your lane and be true to your lane. Be true to who you are. I mean, certainly look at other folks, find models and stuff. But the best lesson I think I probably heard of I learned from all the broadcasters, and I've been around, the Tom Wormies, the Jim Nances, all the sort of crowd of the world, is from a guy called Bill Rosinski, who has been the voice of the Atlanta Falcons. He's been the voice of the Carolina Panthers football team. And this guy, when he speaks, he speaks with gravitas, kind of like Tom does. I've just got an accent. They've got that tone about. And when Bill speaks, it's like God is speaking to me in my ear. And the one day he said to me, he goes, "You're going to be a good broadcaster." He goes, "Just be you. Don't try and be someone else. You're never going to be me." So to the instructors out there, you're never going to be David Ledbetter. You're never going to be Butch Harmon. You're never going to be whoever you think you're going to be. You are you. You're uniquely encoded to help people. Just find your lane and be true to it.
Mark, before we close, if somebody wants to fire off a question to you or get in touch with you, how would they do that? Through your website and what have you?
You can just hit me on social media. If you go to @Mark_Immelman on both Instagram and Twitter, I'm also on YouTube over there. I don't check that one very often. And I have a website, markimmelman.com, and you can reach me through there. So go check it out. I'd love to interact with some folks.
Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. I will talk to you soon, and I hope to see you out on the PGA Tour. And for all the folks who participated, I hope you got something out of this. I know you got something out of it from all the information Mark was able to dispense. So again, it was our pleasure to be part of this. And I think we're going to sign off now, Mark. But again, thanks to everyone involved, and we will see you very soon. And catch Mark on the coverage of the Masters on CBS coming up. Mark, take care. I'll see you soon, pal.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Bye, everyone.